Welcome to It's Meaningless. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs within the first 5 years of business who are tired or stuck and are ready to stomach the brutal truth. Here we discover the meaningless daily habits that keep you from protecting and growing your business. This is episode 8, Ownership and Competition. Who takes the credit? So I've been in business. I've been an entrepreneur for about 10 years, 10 years. And been around entrepreneurs, like directly working with slash for entrepreneurs for at least the past 15, a little bit more probably. Um, and in that time, I've found that like this topic of ownership and competition, effectively who gets the credit, um, really robs, from what I've seen, it robs us in general, us as consumers, us as business owners, us as entrepreneurs, of a ton of deals, like a ton of opportunities. Like from my estimation, about 80 to 90% of like the deals that could have gone through that didn't like end because of a disagreement on who gets credit. Um, in other words, when it's boiled down, it comes to who was supposed to get or didn't get credit. Um, and to me, like I don't know. It's I really like business. Like learning about business. I like finding like new ways that people um like people different business models. Like I like finding new ways that people make money. To me, that's like I can just go. I can I can go days and days and days on in learning more about that. Um, so to me, it's like such a it seems like such a waste that we would we would allow deals to fall through because of this topic. So we have a little podcast episode for it. Um, so effectively, this is well, I'll break this up in two parts. First part, we'll talk about ownership, and then we'll come back around to talk about competition. Um, so this topic of ownership, effectively deals with mainly at I guess business assets. Um, like for me, I'm mostly working the uh, software development space. So making custom software for businesses. So the way that I usually encounter this is customers will come and say, "Hey, we want this new database. We want this new software, uh, custom built to do this, and this." Um, um, and so um, a lot of customers, at least a lot more customers these days, are trying to ensure that they retain effectively ownership to of any work product that gets created, which sounds reasonable, sort of. Um, so, and the sort of part is this, because technically it's not reasonable because it's not. Um, it's not reasonable because well, let's do a little bit of practical. So it's effectively an engagement for like software, and I'm just using this as an example, but an engagement for software development is pretty much like an engagement with between an artist and a client. Um, so just as with an artist, if they paint a picture, paint a painting, um, like it's assumed that they maintain the ownership to their creative, to the rights to their creative. They in effect, for the most part, just sell the actual painting. Um, but in other words, they have full right to reproduce and sell um, other copies of that um, of the painting, like prints and whatever. Um, because effectively they are the ones who created it. Um, and so the same kind of works with the way that I do business, and then frankly, as far as um, like law, and this isn't like um, legal advice. It's just what I've kind of picked up for my business. As far as the law is concerned, like without like specific language in the contract, it's assumed that the person who creates the work is the one who owns it. Um, and the reason I go into that is this: like whatever people agree on, that is, yeah, whatever people agree on in a contract for exchanging goods and services um, is up to them. But um, like in the case of, like in my case, in the case of the artist is in business to like to sell art. So they sell art to people. So effectively, for an artist to say, hey, look, I'm going to spend all this time painting this image and then sell the original and sell rights to the work as well, like that's income opportunity for the artist going out the door. Um, in other words, it makes the artist less productive in what they do and being able to run their business. Um, so um, same with the business I'm in. Um, to sell someone the rights to operate um, a work that we produce, that is to use it and to sell them the rights to do whatever with it as well. In other words, to exclude any further rights that I have to the work is like cutting off my arm. Um, which, I mean, for some companies, they like that works. Um, but like the companies that works for, and frankly, like I don't want to be on a soapbox on this, but I think it does drive home a bigger point for all of us. Um, but for the industry I'm in, it has become the norm in a lot more businesses to automatically kind of just uh, give um, the rights away. The problem with that is is number one, there's always a cost to it. There's a premium associated um, with selling um, with giving that off. Um, uh, so in conversations I've had um, with clients, Some have been willing to pay a premium for owning more. However, the industry as a whole has kind of made it to where in upfront cost, there's no premium. That's not really a premium, because a lot of people kind of assume that that's what they'll get. However, the way they've handled it is um, effectively by commoditizing software development. So effectively watering down the quality of custom software, which effectively is the premium that people pay to, I guess, have this ownership um, of, in the end, like an asset that they would never like have the full benefit or take the full benefit of, that is commercially. They'll never take the full benefit of what could have been done with the output. Um, in other words, they couldn't do what a software company could with that same piece of code, in terms of monetization, in terms of commercialization. Um, so it's almost a waste. But again, in the end, and part of this I'm going into deep because I want to paint the picture that like there's always a cost. Um, like in every market, there's always a cost. In every engagement, in every transaction, where there's a benefit transferred, there's always a cost, even if it's not out in the open. So the additional cost of transferring for a client effectively taking rights to custom software is effectively the way that companies do it is their model is find developers for um, effectively as cheap as you can. Find developers for as cheap as you can, like within reason. Obviously, they have to be somewhat decent. Um, but find developers as cheap as you can, and um, just like throw teams together and like, hey, your team go do this stuff, your team go do this project, your team go do this project. Um, and that I probably make it sound a little bit more strategic uh, than it actually is, because effectively, like as far as teams are concerned, um, one team can effectively one I guess different developers can hop around from one team to another. Words, one developer goes off and works for another company or sits out for a season or whatever. Um, so it's kind of like people all over the place, seats changing fairly constantly. Um, and like meanwhile, like these projects are still going on and they're supposed to get done. Um, and so effectively, like I'm thinking about this as I go because there's no like ultimately there's no winners in this process. The developers don't really win because they don't get they're just looked at as like coding machines. Like, hey, go write some code over here. Um, they don't get to do much of the like more advanced stuff for the most part. Um, depending on the project. Um, but they don't necessarily get to work on um, or get to work on it or improve like a code base, um, that is to be able to help the organization, um, or them develop future apps more quickly. Um, so, um, like the benefit, but as far as the client is concerned, the client effectively, um, they pay in kind of reduce quality of the end result, and like I guess this is kind of quality too, but this is more so in risk. The risk goes up. So effectively, in software development these days, the last stat I saw is that effectively 50% of software development projects go kaput, um, never make it. There's money invested, developers start, um, developers develop, but at the end of the day, it it goes to nothing. Never gets used. Never gets put into use. So, um, and to me, and obviously that's a big deal, but to me, this issue of ownership, I believe, is probably like a huge contributing factor to the why behind these projects, to the why behind the greater percentage. Because effectively, think of it like this: um, the more you do something the same, the more comfortable you get with it, um, which frees you, that is, frees your mental capacity to become expert on something else. So in other words, I have this thing over here. I'm doing this, doing this, doing this. This is all I do. I do it this way all the time. Um, um, it frees you. Um, yeah, there's a level of kind of mental like, okay, I can let that go now. Um, that really gets freed up to be able to think and put those extra cycles on something, learning something new. The thing is with the model of kind of giving um, the clients the ownership um, of the work, that is intellectual property of the code. It just means that for every project, like developers have to start all over. Um, so there are some kind of industry, um, I guess what we call frameworks that kind of help, but um, it's not the same as having developed some of your own, some of your own tools that you're familiar with that you can use, reuse, um, which helps get clients up faster and can reduce the amount of risk definitely, and then reduce the amount of costs associated with getting up. So that is that's an in-depth example of how this topic of ownership um, can go bad. So say go bad. In other words, can I guess be disadvantageous. Um, can kill opportunities, can kill deals. Um, because, but actually, I want to shift to to the why. Um, effectively, this is about same thing we talked about in the last episode. It comes down to pride. Um, so it's like a dog. Um, and in most cases, don't get me wrong, like in some cases, there are reasons in specific ways in which companies, or for specific reasons for some companies to own rights to something like this. Um, but for most companies, one of two things. One, they heard somebody say do it and they did it. But even in that case, kind of the motivation, at least part of the motivation for them is like a dog who just goes around pissing on all the trees he can find. Um, it's like, hey, I need to own this one. I need to own this one too. I need to own that too. And like, I personally, started I started business like that. Um, like especially being in the software development field. Like I I figured, hey, look, I mean, if I'm going to do it, like it might as well be mine. So not necessarily in terms of, well, it was investing money too, um, but definitely investing a lot of time in trying to build out things that I could have like just used somebody else's. Um, but for me, mindset wise, like I want to own it. I want to that thing. I wanted to, yeah, I wanted to be mine. But there's a level of practicality that I think we miss a lot of times when we come to and approach business with that mindset. And that level is there's only so much that we can actually do, and there's only so much that we can do and maintain. It's like, sure, you can build this, you can like, be the one to put this thing in motion in place. But if you really don't have the if you don't have the resources to maintain that and the other stuff that you're supposed to be doing, like what's your core business, um, then it's not a good idea. Like it's kind of it's a foolish pursuit, and I can say that because like I've been there a bunch. Um, like part of my entrepreneurial journey has been shedding the mindset of I need to own this. I need to be able to be to control this. And in other words, if I make it, then I can control it. And that sounds great and it's cool and it's nice, and until it's not, and most of the times it's not. Um, because frankly, that just has to do with, and we'll probably do a different episode on this, but it has to do with trust. Um, it has to do with trust. And I have heard multiple times that it takes, and I've seen multiple times, um, it takes a degree of trust, pretty much to do any kind of relationship, to succeed in anything. Because at the end of the day, like I hate um, this topic of or this mindset of like self-made this, self-made that, like BS. Like you don't have to take like any sober-minded person. Um, it wouldn't take more, shouldn't take more than 60 seconds. Probably wouldn't take more than 15 seconds to just take a look around. Um, after you've seen the things that you've accomplished, to take a look around and see how many people were involved um, in you getting to the place of like accomplishing something, accomplishing what you've accomplished. Um, like there's tons of people who have to um, be involved in the things we do, even if their contribution is only that much. Sometimes that contribution, if it were not made, like you'd still be out. So even if it's somebody who made an introduction, um, someone who promoted you, someone who um, gave you some feedback, like there's always somebody that helps us get where we ultimately want to go. So trust is a big deal. Um, so competition, um, pretty much along the same lines as the topic of ownership. Um, One of the things that I've learned, and again over the course of um, being an entrepreneur, thankfully I started having some seeds of this planet very early. But effectively is this idea of cooperation versus competition. Um, and instead of looking at like other people in my industry, other people in my field is, oh, those are the competitors. We don't do anything with them. We don't talk to them. We don't blah 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 blah. And for small businesses, frankly, that's dumb. And I know that's sharp. I know, but like for small businesses, that's kind of dumb. Um, and this is the reason I say that. Um, if you have large competitors, like huge companies in your industry that are competitors, it, it makes no sense like to look at them as a competitor, like as someone, oh, we don't associate with them, we don't, in other words, like, it makes no sense because one, they have way more resources than you do. um so like there's a lot more ways that you could benefit from potentially engaging with them than um with than by, like, I don't know, trying to pretend like you're gonna beat them. Which I don't know, maybe you will in 10 years. Maybe you will in five, but like today, that's not the thing. So it's like, even if that's your goal, how do you get there? So one of the things that I've found for me is, especially um, with larger companies, um, with larger companies in the same industry, there's a lot of opportunity there. Um, One of the opportunities that I have worked with larger companies on before is effectively like sometimes they get leads and people call in to ask for their services that aren't really a fit for them. Maybe the job is too small, or um, yeah, maybe the request is too small for them. Like that's the opportunity for potentially free leads, and even if you have to pay for them, like up. I mean, in other words, you can still kind of free anyway um, if you can pad that into your costs. Um, so it's like one opportunity, and of course, like developing relationships with other companies in your industry can help you find ways of getting over hurdles that other companies have already figured out, that other people have already figured out, without you having to go reinvent the wheel. That is, again, spend more resources to do the same work that you were having to do already anyway. So, like, I think the heart behind um, this particular episode, this particular message, is one of like being open. Open, number one, to people. Um, Open, number one, to people. Like, we can accomplish a whole lot more if I think it's we can accomplish a whole lot more if we really don't care who gets the credit. And that's a quote from I think that's a quote from Harry Truman. Um, Something that I think is amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit, and it's so true. Um, yeah, it's so true. So a couple of these episodes we'll probably have part twos on, maybe part threes. I feel maybe like there might be a part two for this one later on. Um, and yeah, so we'll probably see that. Anyway, we'll be back here again Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8:30 Central Time AM. And yeah, that's it for this one.